Hello everyone, today we'll start with Unit 3 of Culture and Communication, which is effective communication in everyday life. We have already completed Unit 1 and Unit 2, you can watch previous videos for that. So, what is the meaning of effective communication? Effective communication is the ability to give and receive information clearly and accurately. It is the ability to express yourself and your ideas clearly. So, effective communication is when you're able to express yourself, your ideas clearly, and you're able to give information as well as receive information clearly. Communication comes from the Latin word communicare, meaning to share. So, what is the importance of effective communication? First of all, it helps build strong relationships, because if you are able to communicate properly in a relationship, then it avoids misunderstanding and conflicts. Because if you're not communicating properly, then if you're giving some information, and the other person, the receiver, is interpreting the information in some other way, then it can cause misunderstanding. So it avoids effective communication, avoids misunderstanding and conflicts in a relationship. Second is, it helps in teamwork and cooperation. If we are communicating effectively in a team, then the end result will be much better than if the communication in a team is not good. Next is it effective communication increases confidence and self-expression. Again, the ability to express ourselves, it increases our confidence if we are able to speak for ourselves and express our ideas clearly. And it also helps us, effective communication, it helps us in academic and professional success, because it also helps us in negotiating. Okay, the art of persuading and negotiating, it all involves art of storytelling, involves effective communication and how we play with our words. Communication is basically of three main types, which is verbal, visual and non-verbal. Verbal communication is a use of sounds and words and languages while we are communicating. It's verbal communication. Okay, so when it involves sounds, words, languages and speech, it's verbal communication. Speaking is one of the most effective and commonly used way of communicating. It helps us express our emotions in words. So what are the types of verbal communication? It involves interpersonal communication between two individuals and in one-on-one conversation. For example, two friends discussing homework, etc. are interpersonal communication. So it's a form of verbal communication. Written communication in a form of writing words. Small group communication, which involves more than two people. Public communication, when one individual addresses a large gathering. For example, campaigns and speeches or public communication, an example of verbal communication. Next comes non-verbal communication. Non-verbal communication is when we are not using words but facial expressions, gestures, body language to communicate. So facial expressions, for example, you smile when you meet someone, you keep your face relaxed to use it effectively. Posture shows our confidence and feelings. For example, a straight body posture shows confidence, while a slumped posture is a sign of weakness. Gesture and body languages, including body movements that express an idea or meaning. For example, raising hand in class to ask a question and biting nails when we get nervous. It's example of communication, non-verbal communication. Touch, we communicate a great deal of work through touch. For example, a firm handshake to display confidence and a pat on the back to encourage someone. Then other non-verbal, also like paralanguage, how we speak affects our communication and includes the tone, speed and volume of our voice. For example, talking fast may show happiness, excitement or nervousness, while speaking slow may show seriousness or sadness. So these are all non-verbal communication. Then comes visual communication. Visual communication is when we use images and pictures to communicate with each other. So these are the three types of communication: verbal, non-verbal and visual. Then comes the barrier for effective communication. So what are the barriers of effective communication? Barriers involve physical barriers like the environment and natural condition in which we live. Then other barriers may include linguistic barriers, like the inability to communicate using a language is known as linguistic barrier or language barrier. It can cause language barrier are the most common communication barrier, because if we are not knowing the language in which the other person is speaking, it can cause misunderstanding and misinterpretation between people. For example, slang, professional jargons, and other things, regional languages causes linguistic barrier for effective communication. Physical barrier include environmental natural conditions that act as a barrier in communication, in sending messages from sender to receiver, not being able to see gestures, postures, and gentle body language can make communication less effective. Other barriers include interpersonal barriers. Interpersonal barriers occur when the sender's message is received differently or interpreted differently from how it was intended to mean. Okay, so that is interpersonal barrier. Next is organizational barrier. Organizational barrier are, for example, superior subordinate relationships in a formal organizational structure can be a barrier to free flow of communication. Okay, cultural barrier include culture barriers when people of different cultures are unable to understand each other's customs, resulting in inconvenience and difficulties. That's culture barrier. So there are different kind of barriers to effective communication: physical, linguistic, interpersonal, organizational, and cultural barriers. What are the elements of effective communication now? Elements of effective communication involves actively listening to the person who is speaking so that you are able to understand what information they are giving. Then clear speaking, you are able to express your ideas clearly. Okay, then appropriate tone, we'll also learn it to in considerate speaking, that whenever we are speaking we should be careful of in what tone we are speaking and delivering our message. Then comes empathy. Empathy we have done in our previous lecture in unit 2, I guess. We have completed empathy, which means understanding, not just listening, but understanding what the person is saying, the feelings behind the words and viewpoints. Knowing their perspective basically. Then showing respect and non-verbal cues. Non-verbal cues again, facial expression, body language, gestures are non-verbal cues. So this was all about the introduction to effective communication. First we learned that effective communication is the ability to express ourselves clearly. Then the importance it builds strong relationships, helps in teamwork, avoids misunderstanding and conflicts. Then there are 3 types: verbal, non-verbal, and visual type of communication. Barriers of effective communication involve physical barrier, linguistic barrier, interpersonal, organizational, and cultural barrier. Then comes the element of effective communication, which is listening skills, active listening, non-verbal communication using body language, gestures, emotional intelligence, showing empathy, verbal communication, presentational skill, how we are using our language, appropriate tone, and showing respect to the person, and intercultural communication. So the first topic comes empathetic listening. Empathetic listening is, again, it's not just hearing but understanding what the person is saying. Not just hearing the words but understanding the deeper emotions of what the person is intending to say. So empathetic listening is the ability to listen to others with full attention, understanding, and compassion. It means trying to understand another person's feelings, thoughts, and perspective without judging or interpreting them. Okay, so we're not judging, we're not being judgy, we are understanding what the person's feelings are behind his words. It means listening not only to words but also to emotions and feelings. So how can we incorporate empathetic listening in our everyday life? There's some steps. First is to focus on the speaker, focus on what the person is saying, maintaining eye contact and paying attention. Second is using non-verbal cues, again using body language, gestures, and expressions, noticing all these non-verbal clues to show interest and understanding. Then avoid interrupting when the person is speaking. Allow the speaker to complete their thought before you are responding. So allow them to speak completely whatever they are saying, then you respond. Paraphrasing and summarizing. Paraphrasing is basically repeating what they have said in your own words. Paraphrasing and summarizing. So repeat or summarize speaker's message to confirm understanding, so that you're not intending it incorrectly. So to paraphrase it. Validate feelings, acknowledge the person's emotions and experiences, ask open-ended questions. Encourage the speaker to share more information and feelings. Respond with empathy, again to show understanding and support through thoughtful responses. So, why is empathetic listening important? Because it improves communication skills, builds trust and cooperation, helps in conflict resolution, increases emotional intelligence, and creates a positive environment for the person. So, next is considerate speaking. Considerate speaking means being careful of not to upset people. What is the meaning of considerate? Meaning being careful of not to upset people. Speaking in a thoughtful and mindful manner, in a polite and respectful manner. Communicating in a polite and respectful manner, and speaking in a way that does not hurt other people. Okay, it's the ability to communicate in a polite, respectful and thoughtful manner while keeping in mind the feelings, opinions and perspective of others. So how can we speak in a considerate manner? First is to focus on the words we are using, choosing our words carefully, not using abusive, offensive, insulting and disrespectful language while we are communicating with someone. Second is to speak clearly and concisely, to use simple and understandable language to express ideas. Third is using a respectful tone while we are speaking, so to maintain a polite and calm tone during conversations. Fourth is consider the listener's perspective, so try to understand the other person's viewpoint before responding. Avoid interrupting. It's the most important one actually. Avoid interrupting, because when the other person is speaking something, let them finish, let them complete their idea, then you respond. So let the other person finish speaking, then you respond. Sixth is to listen actively, to pay attention to the listener's words, tone and body language, the non-verbal cues, to focus on the non-verbal cues of the listener. Then to respond with empathy. So considerate speaking also involves empathetic listening, to listen with empathy and to respond with empathy. So why is considerate speaking important? It's important because if we're not speaking in a respectful manner, then why will other people speak to us in a polite manner? They will not. So what you give is what you get. So it's important because it helps build positive relationships. It creates mutual respect and trust. It prevents misunderstanding and conflicts. It promotes harmony in personal and professional life. It improves communication effectiveness. And see, good communication depends not only on what we say, but also on how we say it, in what tone we are saying it. Okay, so that's considerate speaking, carefully choosing our words and the tone in which we are speaking. Next is analytical reading. See, reading is also part of an effective communication, because if we are not aware of facts, logical thing, and we're not able to think properly on our own self, we depend on people to do the work for ourselves, then it will not help us communicate. It will not help us in debates, speeches. So analytical reading is also an important part of effective communication. What is analytical reading? It means reading a text or article, book, whatever you are reading, carefully and critically in order to understand its deeper meanings, ideas, themes and purpose. It means not just reading information, but thinking deeply about what the author is trying to say. So it's the process of reading a text carefully and critically in order to understand its deeper meanings, ideas, themes, structures and purpose. So how can we analytically read a text? First is to read slowly and carefully, to pause and reflect after important sections, focus on understanding, not speed. I've seen many people, they have a plethora of books, they have a lot of books at home and they also read a lot. But they have a habit of, whenever I open their book, there's not even one word underlined, like it's all clean. It's a good habit actually, it's not bad. I'm saying you should make your books dirty or what. But whenever you're reading, at least take a pencil and a highlighter to highlight the important words, because it's not necessary you will know all the words or the meanings or what is the author trying to say. So it's my habit actually, whenever I read any book, I take a pencil, I take a highlighter. If I come across any word that's hard for me to understand, I underline it, I Google it, I search it, I know it, and I get to know its meaning. I write the meaning above the word, or in the space, beside the book, I write the meaning. And if there's any idea or some verb, some sentence I'm liking, then I just write notes in the book itself. So it's a good habit. You can, whenever you're reading, you should read actively. You should highlight key points, notes, and you should write notes. You should evaluate evidence. You should check whether the information the author is giving, it's reliable, it's logical, it's unbiased. So you have all the sources these days. You have Google, you can search it, any other searching engine, you can search it anywhere to know information. So first is to read slowly and carefully, to reflect important sections. Focus on understanding, not speed. Read slowly. If your speed is slow, no problem. Read 4 pages a day, read 3 pages a day, but at least read. Next is to annotate the text. Annotate means to make notes again, to make notes while reading. Third is to identify main themes and ideas. So you have to find the central theme of the text if you're reading novels especially. So identify the central message of the text, main arguments or themes, the author's purpose. Ask what is the author trying to say, what is the message the author is trying to convey. Okay, so you have to identify the main themes. It helps in analyzing the text, thinking critically. Then you should not accept every idea blindly. Search about it. Is the evidence logical? Is it reliable? Is the argument biased, or is it balanced? Do you agree with the author's viewpoint? Think critically while you're reading. Fifth is consider different perspectives. So understand how different readers may interpret the text. People belonging to different cultures, backgrounds may interpret the text differently. So this broadens our horizons. This broadens our understanding and about the text and develops empathy. Sixth is to use different lenses while reading. Personal lens involves focusing on your feelings and opinions, themes or characters. Critical lens involves analyzing writing style of the author, because some people have favorite authors, favorite authors in books because they like the writing style of the author. So every author has a different writing style. So analyze the writing style, characters, themes, structure, whether the author achieved the goal of the text. It's critical lens. Next is cultural and contextual lens, which involves understanding the cultural background, historical background, social issues, ideologies reflected in the text, why the text became popular or important. So analyze all these things. It will help you think critically about the text. Seventh is to ask questions while reading. As I told you, you can ask a lot of questions while reading, which will help you analyze the text critically. So I've written a set of questions like, what is the author's main message? What themes are presented? What messages, what ideas are presented? Does the story support the message? Questioning help reader think deeply and critically. So you can ask these questions while you are reading and you can write the answer also in the book itself. Okay. So this is analytical reading, analyzing the text carefully while reading, comparing ideas with another sources. Whenever you're reading a text, if it has if you're reading some non-fictional book and it has some text, some information, some logical information, then you can Google it, you can search about it, compare the information with other sources, and you can form your own conclusion. You can draw your own conclusion of the text. It will help you think more critically and analyze the text. So last one is informed writing. So informed writing is also a part of effective communication. How you write. Informed writing is basically writing based on proper research, accurate information, and credible sources. It means writing after gaining complete knowledge of the text. So informed writing is a type of writing that is based on accurate information, proper research, credible sources, and evidence. It involves presenting ideas, arguments, and opinions in a clear and logical manner, supported by facts and reliable data. So you are writing information, you are writing something, article or whatever you are writing, based on proper research and complete knowledge is informed writing. So it means writing after gaining proper knowledge and using trustworthy and credible resources for gaining information. It is commonly used in academic, professional, and research writing. So how can we write while after gaining complete knowledge? So first of all, you have to conduct proper research about whatever you are writing. So collect information from reliable and credible sources such as books, academic journals, research papers before writing. Second is to evaluate sources, to check whether the information source is trustworthy by considering the author's qualification, the publisher's reputation, the accuracy of information, supporting evidence, avoid unreliable or misleading sources. Third is to use evidence and facts. So support your idea, whatever you are writing about, whatever topic you're writing about, use evidence and facts to support your arguments with statistic examples, research findings, expert opinions. It will help you support whatever whatever you're writing about. So evidence makes writing stronger and more convincing to the readers. Fourth is to write clearly and concisely. Use simple language. Do not use so many technical jargons that people do not understand what you're trying to say, that they have to Google every single word. No, you can use obviously, but use as much as simple language as you can. You should focus on the audience. Who are you intending to write for? So use simple, organized and understandable language. Avoid unnecessary words, confusing language, overly technical words, jargons. Avoid using that. Clear writing improves communication. Fifth is to consider the audience. As I said that while writing, write according to the needs and understanding level of the readers. For example, use simple language for general readers and use technical terms only when appropriate. So whoever audience are you writing to, consider the audience before writing and use the language accordingly. Sixth is to check accuracy, to verify facts and information before finalizing the writing. So after you have finished writing the article or the text, whatever you're writing, verify the facts again, the information again, if it's still reliable today. This avoids errors, prevents misinformation and maintains credibility. Last is when you're completed with everything, you have checked accuracy, you have considered the audience, you have done everything. Revise the text, read it again and edit it thoroughly. So revise the writing carefully to improve organization, grammar and spellings, clarity and flow of the sources. Editing helps produce high quality writing. So after you have completed writing the information, whatever you're writing, just edit it after just recheck it, whatever you have written. So these are all the parts of effective communication that we have completed. Communication, as we have started, is the ability, it's a skill to give and receive information clearly and accurately. Then we have learned the importance of communication, the different types of communication, verbal, visual and non-verbal. Barriers to effective communication involves physical, linguistic, interpersonal, organizational and cultural barriers. Elements of effective communication, these are all the elements of effective communication: active listening, clear speaking, appropriate tone, empathy, showing respect and focusing on non-verbal cues. First one we have done is empathetic listening, to listen with empathy, understand what the person is trying to say by taking their perspective, stepping into their shoes. Okay. Next is considerate speaking, focusing on not to upset other people, using a respectful, thoughtful and mindful tone while speaking. Analytical reading, to analyze the text carefully, to reading text carefully and critically, to not to only to understand it, but to think critically about the deeper meanings, ideas, themes and purposes. It means not just reading information, but thinking deeply about what the author is trying to say. Then last comes the informed writing, which means writing based on proper research, evidence and accurate information from credible sources. It means writing after gaining complete knowledge. So we should conduct how to write informed writing by conducting proper research, evaluate sources, to use evidence and fact, to write clearly and concisely, use simple language depending on the audience you are writing for, to check accuracy and at the end revise the text, edit it completely, edit it thoroughly. So this was all about Unit 3, Effective Communication in Everyday Life. So we have completed all the 3 units, Unit 1, Unit 2 and Unit 3. Ethical values of Indian culture heritage, developing life skills and effective communication in everyday life. So this was all for today's video. In the next video we'll continue with the introduction of the Culture and Communication book. That's all for today's video. Thank you.